Good evening, everyone. So this class is for the discussion of mock 4 verbal ability section of it. So let's quickly go through what we say is the skimming of the entire paper. So as I always told you in the class, if you're having 40 minutes total, please spend the first 5 minutes looking at all the four passages and any other verbal ability questions there are. Okay. And start picking up the passages or the questions that you want to do. Now, I personally go for the verbal ability section in the starting, but if you're more comfortable with the RC section, please go ahead with the RC section. Now, in this particular mock, if we look at this particular passage and if we skim through this, we see that there are words like John Baptiste, Pauquelin, okay, Palais Royal, and a lot of other French terms, right? So also the vocabulary seems to be a little harder than what we'd really go for in the very beginning. So my suggestion would be that you do not attempt this particular passage in the first or as the first choice, because we can clearly see that this is something that's to do with art or literature, right? And that would require a little bit of a keen eye and a little bit calm mind for you to go ahead with. So I'd suggest get at least a few marks in your hand and then go for these questions. Now, if we look at the second passage, okay, this looks pretty small. So length wise, this is favorable to us. Okay, cool. Now, what about the terms? Are there a lot of terms? No, this somehow appears to be clean. I mean, clean in the sense not a lot of big terms except for these ones, which again are kind of explained in the passage altogether, right? So yeah, we can go ahead with this particular passage. Also, this passage looks to be somewhat from the science genre. So we do not really expect a lot of hard questions. This is a familiar passage to you probably, right? At least on the topic, at least about the genre, you must be familiar with science, right? So we could attempt this passage as the first one. Now, if we move forward, and please note that we're not looking at the questions directly anyways, because we don't want that to impact how we read the passage or how we understand the passage. So we're just looking at the passage, we're just skimming through the passage in the first 5 minutes, and we're trying to understand how exactly can we attempt which passage is the best to attempt and which would fetch us the most marks. Right. So here we again see that this entire passage is about some gorilla experiment. Should be fun to read. Are there any big words that catch our eyes? No, so far phenomenon caught my eye, and that's pretty small. So anything else that's big? No. So this passage also lengthwise, although it's a little bigger than the previous one. So passage 2 was smaller compared to this one. Yes, but again, this also falls onto either the science or uh, to look closely the psychology section. So this also you would be quite familiar. You wouldn't be totally unfamiliar with this. So yes, we could attempt this one as well. Now, if we just move on to the last one, yes, lengthwise we see that passage 4, passage 1, passage 3, and passage 2. This is the order. Okay. Although in this passage as well, just by skimming through it roughly, I do not see any kind of hard words per se. Right. And we can see that this passage is business, right? From the genre of business. So maybe this passage also could be a little familiar to you. So on the basis of familiarity, length, and the what do you say, presence of big words per se, okay, we should be choosing to go ahead with passage 2 and 3 first, okay, 2 and 3, and then passage 4 and then passage 1. All right, so let's do that in this particular order. Let's go to passage 2 and let's see what is this passage all about. Let me just quickly erase the ink on this slide so that we can start fresh. I hope you have done this passage in time limit. Yes. So if you have not done this passage, please please pay close attention to this explanation. But if you've already done the passage and you have scored well, then that's good. So this passage comes from sociology, specifically as a genre, as is evident from the first line. Okay. And this is more or less in a descriptive, rather argumentative, descriptive, moving towards an argumentative style of writing. Okay. And just from the question analysis very quickly, I would like to tell you that this passage come with one medium and yeah, 1, 2, 3. So 3 easy questions. So if you have chosen to pick this passage first, it was a very good decision. You could have easily gotten 3 correct answers. And in case you were stuck with this, for now, we could have left this choice. Because remember, as usual, I always tell you guys, if you have 20 questions, pick 14 to 17 questions, yes, and land on the answers accurately. If you're doing this, no one can stop you from getting a good 90 percentile above. All right, so let's look at the passage. Emily Durkheim, the first person to be formally recognized as a sociologist and the most scientific of pioneers, conducted a study that stands as research model for sociologists today. Okay, so basically this person has done some kind of a study which stands as an example. So it was a very good study probably. Now his investigation of the suicide was in fact the first sociological study to use statistics. So this could be one of the reasons why it's such an important study. And what was it on? It was on suicide. So in suicide, he said about how his aim was to document the contention that some human behavior can be, allegedly told as without the reference of the individuals. That means you don't need to know about the individual to tell what he or how he will behave. Okay, so this is the basic contention of Durkheim's entire study. This was the purpose of his entire study. Okay, so what did he basically do? He went into viewing suicides in a context of social integration. Yes, so what is social integration? How are you cohesive, or how cohesive are you with other people? All right. So in a group, maybe like an organization or a society or any kind of, so even you people at Apex coaching. So how cohesive are you with each other? That's a measure of social integration. All right. So he's already explained it there. And Durkheim basically gave 3 types of suicide. So egoist, anomic, and altruist. Now, what are these words? Are these big words? Well, they're not really big words, but these words change with the context. So we'd have to look at what context did Durkheim really want to specify these words in. All right, so egoist suicide is when promoted by individuals who do not have sufficient social ties. So let me just erase the ink over here a little so that maybe I can draw the mind map for this. Okay, so far, what did I get and how did I come to this conclusion? So in first para, we saw the purpose. Okay, now what was the purpose? Behavior is not the same as individual. So we can explain behavior without knowing individual. Okay, so that's the first thing that we got. Second thing, we know that there are 3 types of suicide, correct? So if there are 3 types of suicide, what are they? Egoist, anomic, and altruist, correct? Yeah. Now, when we have these 3 types of suicide, what do each of these talk about? This has less social ties, correct? Now, altruistic is very high social integration. An example is given of Hindu widows. All right. Hindu widows and military people. So all these are examples. Now, third type is anomic. Anomic is when the social regulation of individual is disrupted. So social regulation is disrupted. Okay, so we'll just put this symbol over this for us to understand. So this briefly is a mind map. So if you can see, I'm just reading the passage. I'm not reading it out because you've already gone through this passage before. But when I'm reading the passage, I'm trying to make a mind map of what's happening. All right. Now, is this taking too much time? Is this taking more time than usual to read the passage? Well, ideally, if you are doing it right, without speaking out so much, it would take the same exact amount of time for you to do the passage either ways. Okay. All right. So now what's the example that's given over here? This has the example of economic depression. Okay. And is this all scientific somehow? Yes, because we've used the data from a government website. So from third passage, we get that data is from government website. I'll just put this as website symbol for now. Okay. Yeah, and what are the conclusions? Now, I don't need to again write the conclusions down, but we can see that there are 3 conclusions and we've gotten them here. What's it? Social behavior can be explained by social rather than psychological factors. And please keep in mind, this is not what he started out with. He started out with thinking that human behavior can be explained without keeping the human in mind. But he found these 3 things. So this is the result of it, not the cause. Suicide is affected by degree of integration and regulation within social entities, and since society can be studied scientifically, okay, sociology is worth the recognition. So this is one reason why he was so popularized. Okay, he was idolized in a way by saying that he's one of the first people to bring recognition to sociology and all. Okay, all right. So having understood this part, this is your mind map. All right, I hope all of you are using your pen and paper when you're reading and you're not just going blindly. Okay, now one particular word that was difficult in this entire conversation of about Emily Durkheim is allegedly. So allegedly basically means you are accusing someone without actually having any solid or concrete proof. So you don't have a proof for you accusing some person about some kind of a theft or anything. All right. Usually you see this in news with in the context of politicians, but yes. Okay. So let me just erase all this ink from here and let's go for the questions and answers. Okay. Now the first question is, in his study of suicide, Durkheim's main purpose was, so we've already discussed this, right? In our mind map, we saw that the purpose is coming out from here. So this actually is the medium level question. For us, this turns out to be easy, because here we have the A option, which is exactly what we get. Okay. Some people might also get confused with D, but you need to be clear that this is the result of the study and not the purpose of the study. Okay. This is what we got. This is not what we aimed for. This is not what he was trying to do. All right. Okay. So if we move forward, since single adults are not heavily involved with family life, now the moment we see single adults, I think we should go here. Okay, so this becomes a specific detailed question, right? So what does it say? They are more likely to commit suicide, which Durkheim categorized as. Okay, obviously we know that there's only one name that's been given to this, and that is egoistic, right? So the answer should be C. Now this is an easy question. Moving forward, ritual suicide of Hindu widows. Again, the moment you see this, we understand it's a SDQ or a, what do you say, specific detailed question. So we go to the types of suicide where we've seen an example of Hindu widows. Where was that? Yeah. So the ritual suicide of Hindu widows. And what was this an example of? This was an example of altruistic suicide. So which of these corresponds to altruistic suicide? So remember, altruistic suicide is when you have very high social integration. Okay, so manifestation of strong social integration should be our answer. So answer should be A. All right, so see, if you're doing your pre-thinking, if you're trying to understand the passage correctly, your questions will be very, very easy. You won't have to really work very hard on your questions. Okay. The approach of Emily Durkheim can be termed scientific on all of the following counts except, okay, so why is this entire passage a scientific passage is what the question is asking. So they use statistics. Okay, obviously this is scientific, so we can leave this out. study of specific instance of suicide. Yeah, now this does not seem so scientific, but let's go to the next one and let's see if we can, get anything from there. The support that Emily received for her reasoning that correlated findings. Okay, so obviously he did this, he got this, and he compared between it. That's pretty scientific. That's just checking the coherence of the study. The study of social behavior with social entities rather than an individual or a psychology. Now that was what the entire subject matter of sociology is. He did not focus on psychology. He did not focus on his individual. Okay. Instead, he went for the social branch of psychology or sociology. Okay, so these three, A, C, and D, somehow are scientific. Now, this has not been brought forward in the passage at all as a scientific method. So this is our answer. Another interesting thing that you might like to know over here is this thing is an example for a fallacy called as a logical fallacy called as cherry picking. Okay, wherein you're choosing the kind of examples you want to give to win an argument. All right. Okay, so according to our difficulty level, I think we were doing passage 2 first, then 3, then 4, and then 1. Right, so let's go to passage 3 now. Let me just clear the ink from this slide. Okay. All right. Where is this thing? Just give me one moment. All right. So in this passage, we're looking at some evidence from Harvard University. Okay. And what did they say? The famous gorilla experiment conducted by this Harvard University, when a woman dressed up in a gorilla suit, ambled, okay, one good word, across the floor, thumping her chest, but 50% of the audience didn't notice. Study shows that we often means make mistake. Okay. When it comes to concentration and perception, humans have a limited capacity for attention, which in turn means that we have a limited capacity to process information. Okay. So when we open our eyes, the whole image gets projected on the retina, but only a selective part of the image gets sensed into the brain. So maybe this is one explanation. So if you can see, the passage started off by quoting a study and its aim, right? The aim was that we make mistakes when it comes to concentration and perception. That was the aim of the study. So here they are just trying to show us what one evidence would be. Okay, this because as the amount of information in the image was too great to be processed, the brain selectively puts its attention on the most important aspects. Okay, apparently, scientists have found this highly prominent events may go unnoticed. Researchers now recognize a phenomenon known as change blindness. Okay, so this is a new term that's involved. Okay, which means that people will often fail to detect changes in their field vision so long as the changes take place during an eye movement or when the view is somehow interrupted. Okay, so if you see how I'm reading this particular passage, I'm giving the right stress and pause. I'm looking at the big idea and I'm looking at what part of it is actually important. Okay, so when we are looking at this whole thing, as I'm sure you have read, the first part of it talks about the study, okay, and a few evidences that have been gathered. Yes, the second part brings to notice something about a new thing called as change blindness. Then further we get to know about inattentional blindness. Okay, right? So we're getting to know about these things slowly, and the main thing is still the same. The study is showing the evidences. And when we come to the end of it, he says, okay, and he's talking about the cause of the intentional amnesia, maybe organic, functional, or circumstantial. Okay, another 3 good words which we can discuss. Okay, so he's asking, Harvard University researchers have concluded that we consciously see far less than our world than we think we do. Okay, we might well encode, okay, another word, much of our visual world without awareness. Okay, but it's been observed that without seeing during the moments of intense concentration, we have all observed that our eyes may be open. Okay, all right. So this is all the rehash from what's been talked about in the previous evidences. So Harvard University is adding some kind of scientific evidences. Okay, Harvard University gives scientific evidence. Okay, all right. So this is the mind map this time. So as you can see, when you're reading the thing all together, you can just leave out the examples and all if there are too many of it, but focus on the main ideas and get a mind map ready. So this way you know this happened in para 1, this happened in para 2, para 3, and this the last paragraph. So when they ask you questions, you're a bit more ready to answer them than you were before. All right. So yes, so these words that I've circled, ambled is walking through. Okay, walking very relaxedly across a hall or anything. And when we're talking about organic in this context, in context of brain, means related to the brain. Functional means related to the functioning of the person, and circumstantial means situational. Encode is how we basically. So let's say that if I ask you to remember the first time you had pani puri, I'm pretty sure some taste would come into your mind, right? So your senses basically tasted that pani puri and your mind remembered that taste. So the process in between your senses and your mind is encoding. Okay, it's basically the process of how you're remembering the memory. Okay, so these were the words and this was the entire explanation of the passage. Now let's go to the questions. If we look at the first question, which of the following statements, and again, uh, so this passage has come with uh, two medium, actually three medium and one hard question. Okay, so the questions from 9 through I think 12 were a part of this passage, and this has come with three medium and one hard. Okay, so not a very great passage to go with second, but yes, since we've already chosen it and we've gone through the entire passage, let's get it over with anyways. Okay, so the ninth question of this entire mock goes like this. Which of the following statements can be directly inferred from the passage about intentional blindness? Okay, the moment I see intentional blindness, my look goes here. Okay, now what would this be? We live in a world of our own and tend to ignore most of the conspicuous events. Absolutely not. That's not what we've seen about intentional blindness. If we go back over here, we can see that the researchers reported that the participants often fail to notice unexpected things on the screen. Okay, and why was this? This was because of selective memory instead of selective perception. Okay, so first option, intentional blindness common phenomena is the brain's mechanism to filter out unwanted details. This talks about selective memory. So this should be our answer. Now, if we look at the C, the mind of a man is like a videotape. Again, that's really not what we are talking about. Okay. The cognitive scientists believe, nowhere have we spoken about the cognitive scientists. Again, if we think that these people are cognitive scientists, okay, we can go ahead with this answer. But again, in that case, the cognitive scientists believe that inattentive blindness results from inhibition of attention. We've not really defined or discussed inhibition of attention. So we can eliminate these three options. A will be our answer. The second one, the primary purpose of the passage. Yes, we've already discussed this. Primary purpose of the passage is to report different investigations conducted by, no, this is a partial scope choice. It's not really about inattentional blindness. If you remember, illustrate the fact that results when people, again, another partially scoped choice. Okay. Describe the views of cognitive scientists about human perception and attention. Well, in a way, we can think about this as one choice to consider and explain the concept of inattentional blindness. And yes, so when we are looking at these two and when we are looking at this, we are looking at this word differently. When we're talking about universality, we're talking about all the mechanisms, causes, and results that are included. Okay, so D is the most comprehensive option that we should be going with. All right. Yes, so let's go to the next question. The passage answers all of the below questions except why do people a lot of times fail to detect? No, this answers this question. Correct? Yes, so what brings some visual objects to conscious awareness? Yes, this also is answered. What's the relationship between perception and attention? Is also answered. So these three have been answered in the passage. Since it's one big block, we can't really point out to these things. But yeah, when we're talking about field of vision, we can see that it's coming broadly from the first part of it. Okay, when we are looking at a part and we are failing to detect the changes of field, and when we are looking about conscious awareness, where we are looking at the last part of it, basically, okay, where we are perceiving it selectively. So from this part of it, and a relationship between perception and attention is the whole passage altogether. Okay, but are the causes, intentional blindness? We have not really come down to it. From here, we understand that it could be any. So we have not really pointed it out. So D is the one that we are looking for. Okay. And the role of the last paragraph, what does it do? Does it help to form conclusion? No, because the conclusion being apparent, real to us all along. Does it lend credence? Okay, so credence means credibility. Does it give credibility to concept through empirical evidence? In a way, we can look at the Harvard University part, okay, and consider this option for now. What about C? Allay. Allay means reduce. So this word may be new to you. Allay means reduce the apprehensions of skeptics. No, it's not talking about skeptics at all. There's no word to talk about skeptics or blamers or anything like that. Support the thesis with corroborating opinions based on scientific findings. Yes, so we are actually basing Harvard's opinion. So this point comes here and not here. Okay, so we are actually basing it on Harvard's opinions and on the scientific findings, right? So it's by this experiment that we have done at Harvard, correct? So yes, both from the start and from the end, yes, we can see that D will be the correct answer. Yeah, so this is the fourth passage. This is the passage that we were supposed to attempt third. So it's a very long passage, and I'm pretty sure you have read through this passage. So let me quickly go ahead and explain you this passage. It starts off by talking about how MBA universities are they have gained a new academic stature within the United States. Now stature is position. Okay, so some observers have attributed to the competitive superiority of US corporations, to the quality of business education and the popularity of business education. So we have seen that MBA over here is beneficial. Okay, and so we see that there's an increase in number of MBAs. Okay, and why is this? Because of some kind of a passage to good life. So let's say passage to good life. Okay, now the rest of it, okay, here comes by 1980s. However, US Business School faced critics. Okay, so in 1980, criticism started. Okay, and there were some business problems, and he's saying that what's taught in the theory is not really what is practical. Okay, so throughout this part, he's given us a few arguments. The first argument is that these business schools are unnecessary and deleterious. Okay, second argument is that they're overly academic and theoretical because they teach quantitative models which have little application to real world. And the third, they are inadequate to fit to these shop floor issues. Okay, and finally, they argued that they encourage undesirable attitudes in students. So these criticisms, where's my, yeah, okay. So these criticisms, there are 4 arguments. Okay, and we have marked that in the passage so we can move forward. In contrast to the expansion and development of business in US and more recently in Europe, so we see that in US and Europe, there is MBA colleges, but not in Japan. Okay, so this is what we can see. And then he goes on to give, why Japanese think MBA is not required. Okay, so I'm writing Japanese why no MBA, and he's given reasons of what ingrained qualities in a man or in a person as a manager, or possible through, what is this? Okay, possible through experience, practical experience, correct? Okay, right, so that's what's given. And then he said that, okay, now at the end though, Even these people are taking a few MBAs. Japanese people are taking few MBAs, but training is mostly in-house. But training is in-house. Cool. So this is our entire, what do you call it? The mind map. Okay. So if you're really reading the passage carefully, you do not really need to worry about the questions. Okay. Now this passage, which started from 13 to 16 questions, let me just quickly erase off the ink from this slide so that we can continue with the further discussion. Okay, this passage, which started from 13 to 16 question, has wow, very nice, 4 easy questions. Okay, so that'll be really nice if we can crack all these 4 very easily. Yeah. So according to the passage, learning which was useful in 1960s and 70s became irrelevant. No one told that those learnings became irrelevant. They told that the methods in which they were being taught was bad. The management education faced criticism in 1980s. Yes, that's kind of what we've underlined somewhere, right? I think I've erased the ink, but yeah, over here. Right, so we can clearly see that this comes right from here. So that is our answer. So I'm not even going to look at the other 2 options because clearly we've gotten our answer right from the passage. Okay, so this is a specific detailed question. Now, the growth in popularity of business school among students was most probably due to, okay, so I can clearly say that this is some kind of an out of scope answer, right? Because it's not the reason that's mentioned in the passage anywhere. I'm trying to look for this, but yeah, there's none. The gain in, what about the second one? The gain in academic stature. Now that is a consequence of it, but it's not the reason for the popularity of business. So not this either. So this is inconsistent. Okay, the large number of MBA degrees awarded, no, definitely not. Now this was the reason why they were getting money, but this was not for the popularity. This is after the popularity. Okay, MBA became popular and then a large number of MBA degrees were awarded. So naturally, D should be the right answer. Perception that it is a passport to good life. Yes, and we can directly find this over here in the paragraph. So let's go forward. A criticism that management education did not face was that it imparted poor quantitative skills. Now, again, this is a very easy question. We can see clearly that this is there in the passage. Okay, it was unnecessarily. I think I can find it right here. These were the arguments, right? So the first one is that unnecessary and deleterious. Finally, it was that they encourage undesirable attitudes. And what else? The second argument was that they gave quantitative models. So yeah, these 3 are clearly right next to us. This is the only one that isn't. So this will be our answer. Answer will be C. Okay. So the question basically asks criticism that management did not face. In case you did not see this did not, you're going to give a wrong answer. Okay. So let's go to the next one. The absence of business schools in Japan is due to the prevalent belief that management ability can be, yeah, this is kind of true, was due to, and yeah, was due to the high priority placed on learning as opposed to no. So in Confucian culture, as mentioned in the passage, let me be very clear. Where did they mention this about Confucianism? I have seen this right here somewhere. Give me one moment. Yeah, here. So in this paragraph, when we see from this line to this line, we can find that this is an opposite answer. Okay, Confucian culture believes in doing and learning. Okay, not learning and doing. Okay, so it's hard to explain for the proponents of business education. No, that's not the thing. He's asking the absence of business schools in Japan. That has nothing to do with the proponents of business education. Okay, these people are promoting business education, but that has nothing to do with why there are no, why there are no schools, business schools in Japan. So contributed a great deal to their success. Now, had this been the case, then there should be more business schools, right? So this is not the answer. A will be our final answer. All right, so with this, we finished 3 of our passages. Let's go to the most perceived tough one, or the first one. Yes, so this one, where he's talking about, a lot of things, actually only one person, but a lot about that person. Okay, let me clear my ink from this slide and go ahead with the explanation to this passage. Among the considerable number of men dedicated to the task of keeping Louis VI entertained, several met bizarre ends. So this is one word that we want to remember. So what does this mean? It means that there were a lot of people who wanted to entertain Louis XVI, and most of them met some kind of, a weird or an unusual end. So this is unusual or weird, all right? Nothing, however, quite unequals the death of John Baptiste Poquelin. This, again, you don't need to remember this noun, okay? Just remember JBP or whatever euphemism you want to use instead. The self-styled Sieur de Molière, so this is the name of the guy, a man established by 1672 as an actor, manager, and chief playwright of this particular band or whatever the company is, performing at performing at this particular place in Paris. Okay, so again, these are all big words that we don't really need to remember. These are French, if I'm not wrong. Okay, and much in demand at the court. So they performed. I now know that this guy M, okay, performed at 2 places. Some place as PR and some place at the court of some guy. Okay, but it might not be a bit dangerous to counterfeit death. Molière as Argan. So this guy's character name was Argan. Okay, and counterfeit. This counterfeit means fake. So counterfeit means fake. Okay, so he's asking, is it not a little strange to cheat death? Is it not a little dangerous to cheat death? But this guy who's an hypochondriac person is someone who is usually anxious about his health. Okay, for no apparent reason, he's anxious about his health. And the protagonist is the hero of the story. Of his last comedy, Les Malades, so this is the name of that comedy, we don't need to remember again, inquired when about to do just that during the play's 4th performance on February. No, the maid, Tonette, reassured him. So this maid kind of reassured our hero. What danger could there be? But Maltais did. So the maid told him about all the dangers there could be in trying to cheat death. Okay, or maybe he was just playing the part of death on a show or something. Okay, so predictably, but Molière, but M did in fact die. So he actually died. So this guy thought that he can play this part so well, and he wouldn't have to die or anything. He would be able to pull it off. But this guy actually died, not actually on the stage. He finished that Argan's part with considerable difficulty, but an hour or 2 later at his home. So at his home, he died. Okay, predictably, a strict Catholic France where actors were excommunicated. Excommunicated is suspended. Okay, so excommunication is suspension of people, or refused burial in a consecrated. Consecrated is sacred. So this is sacred. Okay, ground. So the churchmen patronized the theater and wrote plays themselves. Okay, the usual door. So what is this door? Door is gloomy, something that is sad. Okay, moral lessons were drawn. So basically, these churchmen were not allowing the actors and all to get buried in the church or near that place, because the France at that time was very, very Catholic, and they looked down upon these kind of men. Okay, the state chair in which Molière was as Argan was stricken in earnest. Now, what is this earnest? See, stricken is struck. Okay, so he was put there. Now, what does this word earnest mean? Earnest is sincere in their efforts, not in jest. Jest is a joke. So he was very sincere about sitting in that chair and performing this particular play. Okay, and it was not a joke, can still be seen on permanent display in the upper lobby of the Comedy of Francis. So some kind of gallery or something has still this guy's chair over there. The theater which in effect he founded. So he founded that theater. So apparently Comedy of Francis is a theater. It's apart from the plays themselves that their prefaces almost the only tangible relic of a man, such man much written about by friends and enemies during immediately after his lifetime, who nevertheless remains in many ways aware of these difficulties. So basically, someone was trying to write about this guy, and there was not a lot to go through to find out. So neither his friends nor his enemies wrote anything very great about him. So there's not much to find out. Okay, so this guy is still mysterious. This guy is still enigmatic. Okay, Virginia Scott, who is the author of the latest attempt at a biography. So this person is trying to write the biography of M. Okay, is well aware of these difficulties. So she's gotten to know about these difficulties. No one can disentangle legend from fact. So no one can disentangle over here. Where is it? Yeah. Separate a legend from fact, fiction from truth, not even in the brief life attached to the collection editions of M's works produced by his associate, someone, Laji. Okay, and in the biography by these people. So there were two sources before Virginia Scott tried to write this, so she could read from there, but she couldn't decipher much from there. So Molly M himself left no letters, no diaries. So this guy was very a private person. He did not have any of the possession. So none of his contemporaries means parallels, people who were of his same generation, provide ambiguous. So they provided mixed or unclear signals and conflicting reports. Okay, so these are all the difficulties she faced. So Miss Scott is engagingly candid. Candid means honest about her biographical method. So this is the method she used. Okay, what method did she use? My agenda is to express. So this is a purpose. Okay, agenda means purpose. So very nicely he's given us the word over here itself. So her agenda is to express, let me just go back to my pen. My agenda is to express those intersections between myself and the past that I experienced imaginarily. So she knows a little bit about what happened and she does not. And she wants to imagine a bit of it and she wants to write about it. Okay, in order to know what I believe. Okay, so she's free to decide what these people are talking about, M and his favorite, indeed the daughter or former mistress, and other people who are giving all these, negative things, his friends or enemies who are giving negative things about how he had an affair and everything. She's free to interpret them. So that I just read through this particular paragraph and I explained it to you, nothing else. Okay, so illicit means, something that's to be hidden, not revealed. Okay. So Miss Scott provides valuable correctives here. So where about his affair and all, the strength of her book is in the portrait of M himself rather than the densely researched and persuasive background against which she is able to situate him. So it's not about what people have already researched about him. It's about what do you say? M himself, not all his place and everything. Okay, so what she does so arrestingly is illuminate the complex world of theater and court. So she's bringing out a distinction between, or she's bringing out the story of theater and court. Okay, in the context of M's life. So this is all that we can grasp from this passage. It's not a very hard passage when we read it this way. Okay, so yes, can we go forward with the questions? What is or are the main difficulties in knowing about Molière's life? Again, when we see difficulties, we can come back and we can look at this particular paragraph because that is where this is coming from, right? So what are the main difficulties? As we can see that the first one is nothing but there is almost no tangible relic. Yes, this is there. That's a difficulty. In what ways? In what is known about M's life, it's difficult. Yes, again, this is also given. Both are same points actually. There's conflicting reports. Yes, this also we see. So all of the above will be the answer. These are all the difficulties. But might it not be a bit dangerous to counterfeit? So might it not be a bit dangerous to fake death? Okay, so what can we infer about M's death from this particular line? Now, from this, we know that he died a natural death. No, from this line, we don't know that. Actually, we don't come to know about that in the entire passage. So it's a partial scope. His death was a spectacular one. Although one could go with this option, imagining it, that's not mentioned in the passage. He had a premonition about his death. Yeah, so he was hypochondriac, right? So he was always anxious about things going wrong with him. And premonition, this word premonition means having a bad feeling about something. Okay, so an anxiety about future, a bad feeling about the future. Okay, anxiety of future. All right, so this he did have, but that's not what we mean by this line. So we have to eliminate ABC and think about D. while faking death during a performance. Yeah. So this is what actually faking death means. So wouldn't it be dangerous to fake death? Won't you die? This would mean won't you die faking death? Okay. So this literally means won't you die faking death? Okay. The usual dar, so the usual sad moral lessons were drawn. Now, what is this moral lesson that we are able to draw about M's death? Can we see that actors were immoral? No, actors were not immoral, and this is something that the church believed. Okay, yeah, but this was nowhere brought out by the church. It served the right, it served the actor right because he joked about that. Yeah, now this could be thought of, but let's see the other ones also. One should stay away from performing arts. No, obviously not. In fact, she's writing an entire biography about him. So none of these is not the answer because we still have B in play. So it served the actor right because he joked about that is the sad lesson that you should not joke about death. Okay, so this lesson that we get is you should not joke about death. Got it? Yeah. Now what else? We could say that Mrs. Scott's biographical method. Now again, I think we have seen this somewhere, right? Yeah, over here. So we have seen this in this particular line. So from this, I can say it's not a flight of fancy, definitely not. Okay, she's not coming for any deserved critical acclaim. It is imaginative, but is it not accurate? The passage does not say if it's accurate or not. So let's just hold on with this option for now. Deeply researched, definitely not deeply researched. There was not material to research. That's the whole point of the passage, right? Based on the most probable outcome as imagined by her, yes, this is what we can see from this. So answer will be C. Okay, the right answer would be C. So I think with this, we finish all the passages that are there. Now we can go to the verbal ability section. Yes, so this question is question number 17. Now, this is a medium difficulty question. Yes, and what does it talk about? We are talking about a parajumble. Now, what type of parajumble is this? In this type of parajumbles, we have first one and the last statement fixed, whereas the four statements in between should be arranged. Okay, now on the first look, we can see that it's not uncommon for people to scoff. That means to shoo away or to be arrogant to anyone who's using the word art in describing comics. Okay, fine. So now this guy is talking about comics. So naturally, the question to follow this should be, what are comics? Okay, and here what's he talking about? How they're more popular than ever and how their creators keep finding new audience to enthrall. Okay, so this is a question basically. So either there could be a lead to the question or another question itself. So we can see that comics have a long history that's been linked to low cheap entertainment. This is the line that's talking about comics in these four lines. So I would rather say 2 follows A, and also that 4 is followed by F, because this is another question. Some wonder that how comic books first came to life, right? So these two, if we are fixing, we have A, 2, F, 4, and we are left with 2 options, either 3, 1 or 1, 3. Okay. Now our entire game becomes very simple because we have only 2 options. Let's check it out. So if I'm putting 3 after 2, comic books have a long history that's been linked to lowbrow cheap entertainment, but comics these days. So I'm comparing between the history and present. Are you getting? So this becomes a comparison. What about 2-1? Comics have a long history that's been linked to lowbrow. They span as many genres and subjects, both frivolous and mature, as traditional novels. Okay. Now, if I'm taking 2-3, it's making a comparison. Yes, when I'm taking 2-1, it is explaining further about types of comics. Okay. Now, what about 4? What if I link 4 with 1 and what if I link 4 with 3? Let's look at that combination also. If I link 4 with 1, so there are so many different genres and all. Yes. And how did this come to life? So this could be a good conclusion. Whereas if I'm linking 4 to 3, right? Yeah. So 3 to 4. If I'm linking that, we don't know basically, yeah, we know that comics now are just longer version of Sunday Funnies, but we don't know how they came to life. No, this does not really make sense. So in that possibility, we are eliminating this and we are going for the order of 2, 3, 1, and 4. So answer will be A, 2, 3, 1, 4, F. Okay. All right, let's go to the next question. Now over here, he says 5 sentences related to a topic and 4 can be coherent. Okay, all right. Now, the usual method that we use in the class for this is the same that we'll be using now. First, look for coherence, then eliminate the one that does not fit. Yeah. Now, in this case, we can see that this entire thing talks about HR or management. Yes, and how assets are valuable. Correct. That's what we can get from all of this, right? So now, if we are looking at the first statement, if an organization loses its knowledge assets, the people and the data, it may find itself in an unrecoverable situation. Okay, an organization can have all valuable assets in its hand, but without human assets, it cannot take proper shape. It's been rightly said that among all assets like these, okay, or these, human assets are the most important. All right. It's simple that an organization needs human assets to bring value to others. So I can already see that somehow these two are linked because this talks about other assets and this is bringing value to those different assets. Okay. So maybe I can say 4 and then 3. Or sorry, 3 and then 4, because you have things which are different categories and then we are saying they're cast, they're in different names. What about this? Human resource management is the backbone of any organization, whether it's operating. Okay, so now we can say that 5 is linked with 2. So it'll definitely be 5, 2, 3 and 4 when we're looking at coherence, because the 5 talk about backbone of any organization and whatever industry it is. And then this guy says an organization can have all the assets, but without human, it is not. So these two go together. And 3 and 4, we've just seen the logic. So the one that's left out is our option 1. So our answer will be option 1. Okay. Yeah. So here again, this is a para-jumble. And this is a hard para-jumble. At the first look, it would be very intriguing because the problem of improving Indian agriculture, and he's talked about both sociological and administrative. Okay, so when we are talking about sociological and administrative, we could probably think about how there's no liberalization and all, and it's tying up, but no, that's not how we should be approaching this particular paragraph. Let's look at the entire theme together first. Okay, the same approach that we do in the classroom. How does the theme get connected? Problem of improving Indian agriculture is sociological and administrative. So there's relationship between size and development. Okay, and then he's talking about Indian development, which is already over here. Okay, and the problems of Indian agricultural sector, which will remain with us for the next century. Yes, without improving Indian agriculture. Okay, so obviously this is being talked about over here. No liberalization, nothing will be able to help India. Correct. And we can clearly say that this is going to be the conclusion because it's at the end of the day. That's one of the structural signposts that we have learned in the class. Right. So one thing that you have to look at over here is that there's already a link between each of the statements. So the answer will obviously be A, 1, 2, 3, 4, F. Okay. All right. So this is the last question. Again, over here, we have to do the odd man out. All right. And what's he talking about? The exercise prescribed in all grade systems for development. Now, what are all these all grade systems? We have to find out. Okay. For development of the original spirit in man is the worship of God and development of love and sympathy. Okay. We found out what that exercise is, but in which grade systems? While we have increased immensely our scientific knowledge in the world of human nature, there's not much justification for assuming that we know more about mysteries of human soul than our forefathers. So, although science has developed and everything, we cannot tell that we know more than our forefathers. Okay. Worship and meditation, prayer and devotion are acts of in which the soul is in its completeness and not merely in the body. And we do not kind of what? Practice worship by mind or body, but in spirit and in truth. Okay, okay. These are all kind of interrelated except for this one. Why did it? So this is the only one that spoke about science so far, if you're looking at it. Yeah. The powers of the soul can be atrophied, okay, or destroyed as much as the limbs of the body for lack of use or wrong use. Okay, obviously atrophy is losing function because of lack of use. Right, okay. So if we are looking at all of this, we can clearly kind of identify that this is the only one with a science backdrop. So this is kind of the odd man out, but let's try to first figure out the coherence, because that's also equally important, right? So maybe we can go with something that's very, very generic. Okay, 4 seems to be generic. We do not worship by our mind or body, but in spirit and in truth. Okay, and then we can go ahead, or maybe we can start with 3. So either 4 or 3 can be the starting. And let's actually look at the approach here. So worship and meditation, prayer and devotion are acts in which the soul is complete in its completeness and not merely the body or mind. Is an exercise. Yeah, so we are first talking about the body or mind, and then we are talking body, mind, and something else. So definitely 3 comes before 4. Now, what about 5? The powers of soul can be atrophied. Much. Okay, so this is clearly the last one. And now we have to see if this fits here or anywhere in between. The exercise prescribed, where did we talk about exercise actually? We do not worship and meditation. So we've not spoken about, yeah, we've spoken about exercise here, right? So we can now say that 3 comes 1, 4, and then 5. So this will be our order, leaving out 2. All right, so with this, I think, okay. So there's one more question. So let's quickly look at this question as well. Okay, yeah. Right, so okay, so now if we look at this particular question, we can see that the climate scientists have kind of, agreed that the Earth is gradually warming. Okay, but they've been of 2 minds about it. Okay, but they've been of 2 minds. They've been of doubt amongst 2 things. Okay, and they're not really sure. The process of, so yeah, what we can see is some have speculated. So now this is a para summary kind of question. Okay. So some have speculated that the process works like a giant oven or freezer, warming or cooling the whole planet at some time. Others think that. So there are 2 branches of people who are giving opposite or maybe contradictory or different explanations. So one is like what? Oven or freezer. And the second one is what? It is opposing schedules. Those happening at opposing schedules. This is all the time, this opposing schedules. Like an exaggerated season. So recent research in Germany examining the climate patterns. So again, this becomes a supporting evidence. It's not really the main idea. This is supporting evidence. This is the main idea. Okay, so Germany examining the climatic patterns in the southern hemisphere at the end of I say okay, alternate times. Okay, in 2 hemispheres. So more definite answers. This debate will allow scientists to predict when, how quickly the next climate shift. Okay, all right, fine, cool. So we are seeing that, it's happening in opposing, although there was another explanation. Yeah, and this will help scientists come to a prediction about next climate shift. Cool. So which option has all of this? Scientists have been unsure about whether rapid, okay, so this is about that 2 minds thing. rapid shifts in Earth's climate happening all at once or operating. Okay, research will help find a thing. Okay, in the future, ठीक है. Scientists have been unsure whether rapid shifts in Earth's climate happen all at once or opposing. Yeah, so we've never seen operating. So this option is gone. Opposing, okay, still in the play. Okay, finding a definitive answer will help them better predict. Okay, cool. Research in Germany will help the scientist. Okay, no. This was just a supporting evidence. Again, this is also talking about research in Germany only. So this is also supporting evidence. Answer will be B. Okay, because it's talking about the main idea, not about the supporting evidence. So it covers all our ABC criteria: accurate, brevet, and clarity. What about this modern bourgeois society? Okay, so the modern middle class society said Nietzsche was decadent and enfeebled. Okay, was going to rot and was weak. Okay, a victim of the excessive development of the rational faculties at the expense of will and instinct. So you have taken off instinct and will, okay, at the expense of development of rational faculties. Okay, now what's this rational faculties? Mind, I guess. Against the liberal nationalist stress on the intellect, Nietzsche urged recognition of the dark, mysterious world of intellectual, instinctual desires, the true force of life. So Nietzsche says id is the true force of life. This is what instinctual desires. Okay. With the excessive intellectualization, you destroy spontaneity. So excessive intellectualization is destructive for or destroys creativity. For man's manifold potential to be realized, he must forego relying on the intellect and nurture. Okay, blah blah blah. So basically, he's saying that you're destroying your creativity and instinctual desires because of over intellectualization. Which answer is giving us that? So can I say that just the decadent and enfeebled modern society forego intellect? No, he's not saying to forego intellect. Smother the will. Okay, he did say smother the will because we've given up at the expense of with excessive intellectualization and ignite. No, so this ignite a zest for living and all is not given here. Nietzsche criticized the intellectuals for enfeebling the modern. No, he's not mentioned or blamed any one particular one. So 3 options are gone. I'm thinking D is the right answer. Blames excessive intellectualization, yes. For the decline of modern society, yes. Suggesting nurturing creative instincts. Yes, so he's told us these 3 things. So obviously answer D is the right correct answer. All right, so I hope you had a good time listening to this mock discussion. If there are any doubts, you can go back and revisit the mock discussion at any time. And after that, you can probably schedule a time and then we'll get to meet each other. All right, thank you so much. Have a good day.